you all to this final day of BRIT 2024. It's been an amazing 2 days for us, and I hope you found the conference helpful as of till now as well, and we hope that we can continue to have a good academic feast even today. Before we start today morning's session, just a couple of announcements. If there are residents around who have already registered for the quiz or who would want to register for the quiz, please contact Dr. Nivedita or Dr. Tejal or me. I'm around all here, and those who have already registered would have already been a part of the quiz group, so all instructions are coming there. Please get your Wi-Fi passwords updated so that you are able to participate in the quiz. Another announcement, there is a DIY alcoholic ink bookmark corner that we have here. It is a real fun activity. So all of you who missed it yesterday or couldn't do it, I would urge you to have a look at that and have fun with it. It would start at around 11 o'clock today. So we begin with today's session. Our moderator for the session is Dr. Sabita Desai. She's a consultant radiologist at the Breach Candy Hospital with special interest in breast imaging and interventions, faculty at national conferences, USCON and BISICON, faculty in the IRI outreach program on breast imaging, ex-member of Governing Council Breast Imaging Society of India, and reviewer for IGRI breast imaging. Welcome, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome you all on this beautiful Sunday morning. Nice to see everyone wake up so early and come for this. These last 2 days have been so amazing, and I hope, like me, all of you all have got really enriched with all the knowledge and the experience of our esteemed faculty, and you're going back wiser. And all the workshops that you all attended, I'm sure that once you all go back, you all are going to go back home and do it, okay? So it's my pleasure and honor to moderate this first session, which is on multi-parametric mammography, DBT and contrast enhanced mammography. And the chairpersons are, it's an honor for me to introduce Dr. Om Prakash Tauri, whom I fondly call my Guruji. Hi. He is beyond amazing. He is a professor at D.Y. Patil Institute and Asian Heart Hospital. He has an experience of 45 years in radiology, many invited lectures in national and international conferences. A lot of notable achievements, like he's an examiner of MD, DMRD and DNB exams in many universities, and president of IRIA in 2003 and editor in chief for the Indian Journal of Radiology and Imaging from 1995 to 2000, and he's a pioneer of MRI startup in India at Breach Candy Hospital, that is where I work. So I welcome you. The next chairperson is Dr. Surita Kantharia. I know she's a very, very hard-working girl. She's the head radiology unit at BARC Hospital. A lot of academic achievements, awarded first prize for our work in evolving mammographic developing asymmetries as a part of breast awareness and early detection program conducted for the community in the BARC Hospital. Resourceful learning tool on in Atlas of Breast Cancer Early Detection, which was launched on 23rd of Jan 2023 by IARC. My third chairperson is Dr. Himanshu Soni. He's a professor at GCRI BJ Medical College, Ahmedabad, with 20 years of experience and 22 publications in national, international journals. His main area of interest is head, neck, breast, and orbit imaging. So I invite the first speaker for today, Dr. Meenakshi Thakur. For me, she's our dear Sushma ma'am. She has mentored so many people here in the Tata Memorial Hospital. She's a radiologist. She's a medical professional who has trained to diagnose injuries and diseases with the use of X-rays. And I welcome Dr. Sushma ma'am, Dr. Meenakshi Thakur.
Good morning everyone and welcome to this third day of BRIT at TMH. So this BRIT 2024 conference, as you all are aware, has a theme of synergy. And this is not a lecture which I am going to give you here, but it's a brief introduction why this theme has been chosen for this particular conference. This word synergy stems from the Attic Greek word synergia, meaning working together. The concept of synergy holds profound significance in the realm of breast imaging. Understanding the intricate interplay of cellular biology within the human body is essential and any disharmony in this synergy can lead to development of cancerous growths. It is within this context that the synergy of breast imaging practices become invaluable. At most of the places now, analog mammography has already been replaced by digital technology. So further advancements such as tomosynthesis and contrast-enhanced mammography have been integrated into the imaging system, allowing for more accurate and detailed assessments. Combined sonomammography report correlating with clinical features generate a synergistic Barrett's report. This comprehensive approach is augmented by the utilization of color Doppler and elastography, providing additional insight into the breast tissue characteristics. Recognizing the importance of perfusion in diagnosis, avenues such as contrast-enhanced mammography and MRI have been explored. Faster acquisition techniques of MR are still being investigated to improve the diagnostic accuracy and overcome the challenges, such as background parenchymal enhancement. The symphony of improved technologies heralds a new era in interventional breast imaging as well. Earlier, when a mammography detected abnormality was there, it used to be like you use a lumbar puncture needle and CC and MLO view and just take a ML view and CC view and see where the two are. They should meet at the site of lesion. But now it has evolved to require localization and further stereotactic biopsies. Advancements like vacuum-assisted biopsies offer much better tissue sampling and core specimen. Minimal access surgical approaches have revolutionized the therapeutic excision, minimizing the patient discomfort and recovery time. When coming to multidisciplinary panel discussions, the importance of these in bringing together the radiologists, pathologists, treating physician and surgeons can't be stressed enough. While artificial intelligence plays a vital role in image analysis, the wisdom and expertise of the radiologist will remain irreplaceable. Improving technology has created a synergy of imaging with interventions to be able to target the sample which are sample for hunches raised on imaging. AI can further synergize to shift the hunches to improve the true positives and avoid unnecessarily false positives. But this wisdom rests with the radiologist, who are the supreme constituent of this synergy, to integrate all modalities and use them wisely. So here we are at the brim of synergy, and we wish to engage you all with comprehensive learning and take-home message that can empower your understanding in breast imaging and interventions. Last 2 days we have conducted workshops, live relays, videos, sessions on screening and interpretations. So today we embark on core breast imaging sessions. So I welcome all the delegates and faculty to this third day of BRIT 2024.
Hi, good morning everybody, and welcome again all delegates and faculty to this bright Sunday morning, day 3 of a wonderful academic session going on here today at the BRIT 2024.
Slide तुमचे.
Yes, it's okay. Yeah. So the first speaker today is Dr. Tanvi Jaki. She has done her specialization from Hinduja Hospital, and following that she has achieved a lot more. She has upgraded her knowledge and skills. She did a clinical fellowship in breast imaging at Toronto, Canada, and has also been an observer at the New York Sloan Kettering Hospital. She has special interest in breast interventions and MRI. Apart from all the academic gains, she has also mentored resident doctors and practicing radiologists, especially in breast imaging and biopsy techniques, both at national and international level. She has also been into research on core biopsy. She has a number of publications and books which she has written, and we all know her on the other front. She is a medical artist. She has a lot of illustrations published in the journals and medical textbooks, including gynecology, breast imaging, dermatology, and interventional radiology. It is a pleasure to introduce and invite Dr. Tanvi. Please come up, madam, for your talk.
Thank you so much for a very kind introduction. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak at BRIT 2024. So without further ado, let me begin my talk today on radiological anatomy and synergizing modalities. In my talk, I will give you a brief overview of the breast anatomy. We will discuss challenges in multi-modality cross-correlation and how we can overcome these challenges. And lastly, I will touch upon the concept of synergy. Anatomy, as we all know, this is a diagrammatic representation of the cross-section of the breast. The breast is a modified skin gland, and it develops from the mammary ridge in the embryo. The breast is situated below the clavicle up to the 6th, 8th ribs. Medially can extend as much as the sternum and laterally to the mid-axillary line. We are all well acquainted with the anatomy, so I won't delve too much into it. Anteriorly, the skin is what supports the breast, and posteriorly it lies on the pectoralis muscle. You have the pectoralis major anteriorly, the minor posteriorly, and the serratus anterior and ribs. So the functional unit of the breast is the TDLU. The breast is composed of 15 to 20 lobes, and each lobe is identified by a major lactiferous duct that courses its way anteriorly to the nipple. The terminal portion of the duct is what branches, and each lobe is composed of several lobules, and these lobules have acini surrounded by specialized connective tissue. Now, surrounding this parenchymal cone of the breast is a layer of adipose tissue. Regardless of the modality, whether it's mammography, ultrasound, or MRI, the anatomy is what remains constant. So you will have the skin, the subcutaneous fat, the echogenic glandular parenchyma, the retromammary fat, and then the chest wall. A special mention of Cooper's ligaments. In addition to the gland and the fat, there is a network of fibrous connective tissue, and these are what are Cooper's ligaments. They extend anteriorly like mountain peaks, and the importance of this is they extend up to the skin via retinacula cutis. And that is why it is important to make a note of these, because ducts can also extend along retinacula cutis to the skin, and that is the reason why tumors in these ducts can also extend, and you find tumors in the subcutaneous plane. This is also the reason why you must be careful when we decide whether or not to perform a skin-sparing mastectomy in a patient with aggressive DCIS, because you can land up with recurrences in the chest wall. Coming to the posterior part of the breast, you have the pectoralis muscle anteriorly and posteriorly, and normally we always recommend a very good, for a good MLO, you need to see the pectoralis muscle. This is a case of Poland syndrome with an absent pectoralis muscle. In a normal patient, this is how the pectoralis major and the minor would appear, and this space is known as the rotor space in between the muscles. This is important because if you get a lymph node in that space, this is a rotor's lymph node. It is considered as a level 2 lymph node. Isolated rotor's metastases are rare. They're usually associated with additional axillary lymphadenopathy, and it needs to be excised. It is important when you scan the pectoralis, especially when you're looking at larger patients, larger breasts, to dip your focal zone down so you can access masses like this. This is a mass in the pectoralis muscle which is actually eroded from the pleura into this in a patient with triple negative breast cancer on surveillance. Over here, this patient presented with mastalgia. The breast was normal, but posterior to the pectoralis muscle, you see these anechoic cystic spaces, and this was a vascular malformation in the interpectoral plane. Vascular anatomy is very simple. You have three major vessels. One is the internal mammary, which provides the blood flow to the medial half. The lateral thoracic from the axillary, which provides blood flow to the lateral and the central, and some intercostal vessels which perforate. It's beautifully seen on the CC view as well, and many times we can see calcifications in those vessels, but nothing like the MIP. MR MIP images show the anatomy very beautifully. And you can also see with the neoangiogenesis, exaggerated vascularity, invasive lobular carcinoma on the right. This is a patient with DCIS in the axilla, just a palpable mass which came, and on MRI you can see extensive non-calcified DCIS, which is segmental non-mass enhancement. This also shows exaggerated vascularity and skin enhancement. This patient has undergone a lumpectomy several years ago and now is presenting with the skin thickening and enhancement. A word on lymphatic drainage. It is extremely important to note lymph nodes because that is what is going to help us stage the axilla. We often see lymph nodes on the MLO view, and these are the level 1 lymph nodes that you would see on the mammogram. Lymph nodes are divided into 3 levels. The ones marked in green, they are lateral to the lateral margin of the pectoralis minor, and they are level 1. Level 2 are behind the pectoralis minor, and the lymph nodes which are superior and medial to the margin of the pectoralis minor muscle, these are level 3 lymph nodes. Anatomy of lymph nodes, we all know that it has a central echogenic hilum and a uniformly thin cortex. Whether it is on the mammogram, which appears lucent, or on the ultrasound, the cortex has to be thin and uniform in thickness. On the mammogram, we should look for calcifications in lymph nodes which signify DCIS and metastases. We can see outlines of the lymph nodes well with speculation for extranodal extension. And sometimes in patients with implant ruptures, you can also see silicon granulomas. This is a snowstorm appearance on ultrasound. When we see the cortex thickened in this manner, whether it is more than 3 millimeters, so whether it is a thickened cortex, hilar indentation, partial effacement of hilum, or complete loss of hilum, these are the signs of metastatic adenopathy. Just to show you on MRI, lateral to the pectoralis minor would be level 1, and this would be level 2. Not everything that enlarges in the axilla is a lymph node which is metastatic. Here is a postmenopausal patient with skin thickening and with sudden onset hard cord-like structure in the breast with a large lymph node. This was lymphatic filariasis. And here is a patient with a very normal looking breast but a large lump in the axilla, and this is a lymphatic malformation. The second group of nodes that you must know in 20% are the internal mammary nodes. So although majority drains to the axilla, 20% do drain to the internal mammary, especially medial masses. This is how they look on either side. You have the internal mammary vessels on either side of the sternum. This is what an enlarged metastatic node looks like. It is important to note in metastatic internal mammary nodes, they are a site of occult metastases in 20% of patients. And we would upstage your disease to 3A and 3C. A word on accessory breast. Why is it important? We often see it in the axilla. Basically, the breast that develops from the mammary ridge will fail to involute, will result in a lump. Whatever happens in the breast can happen in the axilla. So if a patient is undergoing a mastectomy for some disease at a point, you must inform the surgeon that this patient has accessory breast tissue to completely remove it. So synergizing modalities is challenging, especially when it comes to breast, because breast lacks an anatomical landmark other than the nipple. Breasts come in various sizes and shapes. They vary across densities. There are differences in laterality. Sometimes congenitally there's asymmetry, sometimes they are operated. And this is compounded entirely by the fact that we have 3 different modalities for imaging and 3 different techniques and 3 different positions in which we image patients. So if I want to cross-correlate and overcome these challenges, let's start with mammography and ultrasound correlation. The principle remains the same, whether you correlate lesions on mammography and ultrasound or MR and ultrasound. The first thing you must do is review your mammogram and identify the lesion. You characterize the shape, the size, how it looks. But more importantly, you must look at the location of this lesion, not just the distance from the nipple, but where it lies in the parenchyma, or is it at the interface of the parenchyma and the fat. In addition, you must not forget to look at landmarks. The rule of cross-correlation is that between the mammogram and the ultrasound, the background tissue looks the same, which means if it is dark on the mammogram, it's going to be dark on ultrasound. But when it comes to masses, the rule is exactly the opposite. What looks white on the mammogram or dense is going to look dark on the ultrasound. Correlation with ultrasound has to be done on 3 accounts. You must correlate the quadrant the lesion is in. You must correlate the depth, because you can get 2 lesions in the same quadrant, but they may be at different depths. And lastly, you have to correlate the distance from the nipple. We are all acquainted with the clock position, which helps us do that. For those of you who have heard my talk on triangulation of masses, you know that there are 3 planes: the CC plane, the MLO plane, and the lesion plane. And I will quickly go over this. Here is a patient with 2 masses in the breast. We know that if this is multicentric or multifocal, we need to document and inform the surgeon for that. The larger mass is here, and this is the smaller mass which is higher up. So just bear with me. The first thing that you would do is you drop the posterior nipple line, which is the CC plane. The CC plane would go from 12 to 6 o'clock. MLO is not an orthogonal view, and therefore the MLO plane or the posterior nipple line will not go from 3 to 9, but it is medial, lateral, oblique. So that is how it would go. The lesion plane is the 3rd plane. That is the plane passing through the lesion. Now this is marked in red over here, and this is just above the posterior nipple line on the MLO view. So you drop a line in the CC, which is medial, you drop a line above the posterior nipple line, and where it intersects is where your mass is. Now we've located the quadrant, we've located the clock position, that this mass is at 1 o'clock 2 centimeters from the nipple. Importantly, you must correlate the size. The size matches, the characteristics match, the surrounding area matches, and we know we are in the correct spot. What about this? Now these are the ones which are challenging because this is a small lesion and surrounded by fat. So using the same principle, we've dropped the CC MLO lines, we've dropped the lesion plane, and where it intersects is the lesion, which is the second one. And how do you know it's the second one? Because it is surrounded by fat. So surrounding tissue is fat, which is dark, is hypoechoic, and now you know you're at the correct spot. Here is another patient with a mass far laterally and far posteriorly. Using our technique, we have located this mass at around 7 o'clock, and it's at the lower outer edge. But what we also notice, this is a breast cancer, but we also notice this nodule. Now this looks like an intramammary node. Intramammary nodes are commonly seen in women. But it's extremely important to know whether this is a metastatic intramammary node, because your staging goes to stage 2 irrespective of the axillary node staging. So if I want to find out where this lesion is, I don't have it on the CC view, I have it only on the MLO view. So when I drop this line, I know it could be anywhere here. I find the node, but is that the correlate is the question. When you search diligently, you will find a vessel. So if there's a vessel along this node, like it was in this case, we know this is the exact one which we were searching for. And this is a metastatic node. So landmarks are extremely important. Here, there's a distortion, but if you see on the tomosynthesis, there is a nodule. This is a cyst beside the distortion. And therefore, it's important to look for landmarks, which could be anything. You search for it. It can be a cyst, it can be a calcification, it can be a clip, it can be a seroma, to look for lesions. Now, correlating MRI with ultrasound is tricky, because the chances that you would find a lesion on second look ultrasound vary from 23 to 89%. It's important for you to note that if a lesion is malignant, there are higher chances of you finding a correlate on ultrasound. If it is a mass, there is a higher chance of finding it compared to non-mass. Even smaller masses are easily found compared to a larger non-mass. The process is exactly the same. You would identify the lesion on your mammogram, on your MRI, you would characterize it, but the two most important things that you would do now is you look at it in respect to the mammary zone, and you look at the configuration of the surrounding parenchyma of fat. So the most important thing that you must know is that on ultrasound, everything flattens. The patient is in a supine position. The lesion will look flat. It looks closer to the pectoralis compared to the MRI, which is in the prone position where the breast is in a pendant position. So lesions that are very close to the chest wall, often you find this is abutting the pectoralis on ultrasound, and that's how we report it. But on MRI, you will significantly find that there is a gap, and that's because the lesion falls towards the pectoralis. It is important to scan a wider area on ultrasound on second look. Here is a nodule which is it's an enhancing mass at the posterior edge of the parenchyma and fat, and it's in line with the nipple on MRI. But on ultrasound, the breast is going to flop laterally and the lesion would shift slightly. It would no longer be in the nipple plane. Sizes and shapes can vary a bit between MRI and ultrasound. MRI will overestimate the lesion. The size will look larger compared to ultrasound, because on ultrasound it's flattening the lesion as it falls back. Orientation. Benign lesions will orient themselves parallel to the chest wall on ultrasound, and they would be anteroposteriorly oriented on MRI. But the most important clue is where the lesion lies with respect to the mammary zone. This is what will help you localize the lesion on ultrasound. The area marked in pink is your glandular parenchyma. Here is a nodule which is posterior to the glandular parenchyma, and you would have to go posterior to this echogenic area to find your nodule. This is a lesion within the glandular parenchyma. You note it's within the echogenic parenchyma, and here's a lesion at the interface. This is a lesion at the interface. So here is another example of an enhancing nodule at the anterior fascia, which is the echogenic line here, and you can see it. Similarly, a posterior nodule, and you can see it at the posterior margin with the retromammary fat. This is laterally again at the interface, and you know it's at the interface of the fat and the parenchyma. It's important to make sure that you see the configuration of the surrounding area. So here is a T1 image. This is not the lesion which is enhancing. On stir, you can see there's this bump of tissue, and the lesion is posterior to it. So also on ultrasound, if you see, this is at the interface again. You see it's just in the anterior part of the parenchyma, and there is enough glandular parenchyma behind it, and there is this bump of tissue. So you know you're in the right spot. Now, if a lesion is posterior or far lateral, it would look more superficial on ultrasound because the breast flops that way. What happens when there are two lesions? The second lesion, when you search for, or a smaller lesion, the first lesion will serve as a landmark to find the second lesion. But does the interlesion distance remain the same? Not really. It would be larger on ultrasound. And especially this happens when the breast is fatty, because when you compress with the probe, the fat will divide more further and pushing these lesions apart. Apparent deformity of lesions, benign versus malignant. So in green are marked benign lesions, and they look different in ultrasound and MRI, apparently deformed, but this shape and difference is slightly reduced when it comes to lesions on MRI. Lesions close to the nipple, very good visualization, whether they are large like papillomas. This is a small papilloma, ductal anatomy beautifully displayed on MRI. But there will always be a subset of lesions which are occult on ultrasound. And for this subset of lesions, we know that the probability of malignancy of ultrasound occult lesions is more than 2%, and they definitely need to be biopsied. If you do not find a definitive ultrasound correlate, but you're almost certain that this may be the one. If you biopsy it on ultrasound, make sure you place a marker, because if it is discordant, you would go ahead with an MR-guided biopsy at a later time. For this patient, we were not sure, and Dr. Palak performed an MR-guided biopsy and a clip has been placed. So that brings me to the end of my talk, and I want to leave you with this image. This image is of the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra. This is a symphony, one of the finest in the world. You have hundreds of musicians playing different instruments, and there is a waiting period of nearly 6 years to see this orchestra on a weeknight. And why am I showing you this slide? Because this is the perfect example of what synergy is all about. Synergy is when different people and different entities come together and they produce a joint effort, and that combined effect is much greater than what an individual would do. And that happens because they build on strengths of the players, they compensate for the weakness of some, and they value and respect the differences. So just as the conductor of this orchestra, as a breast radiologist, we have 3 different modalities: mammography, ultrasound, and MRI, of course contrast and other things, but we need to build on the strengths, compensate for the weaknesses of these, and then get them all together to have a beautiful symphony or perfect synergy for diagnosis. Thank you very much for a very patient hearing.
It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Madhvi Chandra Madam. Madam is a senior consultant and co-chairperson at Sir Gangaram Hospital. She is in charge of breast imaging division at Sir Gangaram Hospital, co-chairperson in Department of Radiology, academic coordinator for National Board of Examination, and related teaching program or DNB at Sir Gangaram Hospital again. Madam is currently General Secretary of the BIS. She is a member of IRIA ICRI subspecialty group for breast imaging, member specialty group for breast imaging of the National Board of Examinations. She is a subject specialist in breast imaging and radiodiagnosis for NBE, and served as examiner and inspector for the NBE in the past. Madam is going to speak on the role of digital breast tomosynthesis and synthesized view in mammography interpretation. All yours.
Okay. So, good morning, and I'm really glad to see quite a turnout. I wasn't expecting anyone in the hall this early in the morning, but here we are, and I don't like going after Tanvi's brilliant talk, but I'm starting, and I love Tomo, so I'm going to waffle on about it a bit. So, we are looking at DBT and synthesized views in mammography interpretation. Now, we all know that mammography is the one breast imaging investigation that has level 1 evidence for reduction of breast cancer mortality by up to 40% across various studies. But it's not a perfect investigation. It ends up missing a lot of cancers and a lot of criticisms about its sensitivity as well as its specificity. But we won't listen to the critics right now. We'll go on to Tomo. So what are the reasons for missing breast cancer? I mean, some of the reasons are human errors. There can be poor positioning, satisfaction of search, reader bias, perception error. All these are beautifully brought out in this very old article, but it's a great article if you would like to read it by Majid and others. And some can be intrinsic tumor characteristics like very slow growth of a lesion. Then there are some things, however, that we can correct by improving technology, and that's what's been done by adding Tomo. So anatomical noise is overlap of breast cancers by fibroglandular tissue in the breast, because fibroglandular tissue appears white on X-rays, on X-ray mammograms, and so do non-calcified cancers, and they can just be obscured by overlapping fibroglandular tissue. So that is one reason. And another can be subtle features of a malignancy, which we'll see in cases as we go along. Now, how is DBT done? So DBT, you can see the tube moving, how remarkable. That video wasn't working every time I tried my slides. Today it's run. So basically it's a number of low dose exposures with the C-arm moving in an arc, which can be 30 degrees to 50 degrees, depending on the vendor of the machine. And it's it takes multiple exposures. You can see it exposing across the arc, and then it comes back to the center point, and you can take a 2D view at that point, or you can have a synthesized view reconstruction. Now, all these low-dose exposures, the data collected is back reconstructed into multiple thin slices. You can see that stack of slices over there, and these slices are 1 millimeter thin slices that are reconstructed. And the first slice is the one closest to the detector. So on the CC view, it will be the caudalmost, and on the MLO view, it will be the lateralmost. That is your first slice. Now, again, anatomical noise. You can see how fibroglandular tissue is obscuring that cancer in a 2D representation of the breast, which is essentially a 3D organ. But when you're cutting slices, then there'll be at least one slice in which the cancer will show up very nicely, very similar to what happens in chest x-rays, where there's a retrocardiac pneumonia, which shows up very nicely on a CT slice. So that's basically how TOMO works. Now we'll see how TOMO helps as we go along with various cases. One thing that people have been very concerned about is radiation in tomosynthesis. Now, everybody says too much radiation. However, the fact is that we were doing analog mammograms for so many years, and the TOMO plus the 2D is still less than conventional analog doses. And over the years, there has been no lifetime added risk thanks to analog mammograms. But the principle of as low as reasonably achievable always applies in radiology. So synthesized views were developed. These are known as C views, S views, etc. And basically it's summation of all the data that's been acquired in tomosynthesis into a representative 2D image. And these images are from an article by Melissa Durand. And what you see is that on the left is the regular 2D view, and this is the synthesized view, and there's very little difference in the images. However, radiologists, we are just, very difficult people, and we don't like the C view, S view when we begin. There have been studies that people with C view capability, up to 3/4 of them have never used C view. They continue to take 2D mammograms irrespective of the radiation dose. So we are contrary people. And now I don't have C view capability. What I do have is good friends who've given me cases. So thanks Savita for these cases, and thanks to Janaki for her cases. So on the left we have the 2D images, and on the right we have C views. And you can see how the architectural distortion would almost be, seen as just strands here, but it kind of pops out there. So better seen here actually on the C view. So the advantages to C view imaging. This, however, didn't enhance on MR, and Savita left it on follow-up, and it's fine. And in this case, you can see some AD here on the 2D. It's seen almost equally well there. On the MLO, however, it's seen better on the C view than on the 2D. And this was an invasive lobular carcinoma. And here's another where you can see that there's straightening there and tiny spicules radiating out. So architectural distortion, kind of better seen on the synthesized view. So synthesized view has its advantages. Then this is a case from Dr. Janaki. And you can see how the calcium is absolutely popping out, making it much easier to see. But there can be pseudocalcifications on C views, on synthesized views, so not always a great modality. There can be some artifactual calcifications. Density appears slightly lower on synthesized views than on regular 2D mammograms. And again, another example of calcification standing out much better on synthesized views. So that's it about synthesized views. And now we come to what TOMO helps us with. So firstly, it reduces false positive recalls. Now, one of the commonest things we come across are focal asymmetries in daily practice, which is essentially an area that appears denser on both views, which you can see in this case. So now we have to go and call the patient back for spot compression. There's patient anxiety, there's additional workflow obstruction, and more physician time taken. and then we might need to do an ultrasound also. However, if you have a simultaneous tomo acquisition, so you can see how, as it runs through, there's actually no mass there. It's just tissue overlapping. So this tissue summation is causing that focal asymmetry, and we don't need to call that patient back at all. We are clear that there's absolutely nothing there. So this patient won't be recalled. We'll save time. It'll be a regular BI-RADS 1 mammo. Here's another patient with focal asymmetries in both breasts, but we are addressing the one in the right one right now. And this on tomosynthesis can be seen to be a clear reniform structure with a fatty hilum. So it's just an intramammary node. Again, nothing to be done, BI-RADS 2, and this patient goes back to screening. I mean, the one on the other side is a different story. That was a cancer. So not every focal asymmetry is benign or nothing. And the other thing is skin calcification, for which we used to have to do additional tangential views. But now we know that if it's on the skin slice in tomo, nothing more to be done. The calcs are there. They can't be mistaken for malignant calcs. And this patient also doesn't need anything else done. So tomo helps reduce a lot of useless recalls. We save time, workflow efficiency increases. However, tomo does occasionally give us apparent AD, and we do have to roll views, etc. So it's not 100%, but it's good. Then it picks up a lot of AD which is occult on 2D. This case was in the workshop, a 44-year-old patient with a right breast lump that she said we couldn't palpate anything. On tomo, you see those beautiful sclerosing, complex sclerosing lesions, which are just not seen on the 2D at all. So there's so much architectural distortion that is picked up on tomo, but a lot of it is benign. So this is another thing that people do complain about, but now there are protocols in place for management, which put a lot of these into follow-up rather than straight biopsies, etc. They say that if it's not enhancing on MR, you can leave the patient on surveillance rather than go in and intervene. Here's another patient. Challenge you to find the architectural distortion there. Would anyone like to find the AD there? There it is. If you look at it retrospectively, maybe, but not at first look. So a lot of AD that's picked up, but a lot of that is benign, but that is the single most important pickup for tomo, because the most cancers that are missed on routine mammography are because of subtle architectural distortion, which is the third most common finding for a breast cancer. So tomo really scores in picking up architectural distortion. And we are going to see some cases. So this is a 52-year-old female who came in for a screening mammogram. Can anyone tell me where the abnormality is? Just shout out. We don't have time, so 1 second is all you get. Left? So, tomo. Okay, so malignancy right there. I was very happy, thanks to whoever said left, because you just proved the point. So here's a 75-year-old with malignant left pleural effusion, and we are hunting for the primary. And she's got gynoplast on, and yeah, what a mess here. So half of the medial thing is covered by gynoplast, and we are looking for the malignancy. So because of time, I didn't put the video here, but this was right here, medially 10 o'clock. So very difficult to find. We'd never found it on ultrasound. We wouldn't have found it on routine mammo. We'd have been, just telling the surgeon, sorry, we can't find your malignancy for you. So this was a tiny malignancy. So tomo really helps. Here's another patient. This is a 35-year-old who had a mastectomy 5 years earlier. A lot of you would have seen this case earlier. So she just decided 5 years later to come in for a screening mammo, and clinically negative. Mammo, we couldn't really see that much. But the moment you go to the tomo, there's a clear speculated thing there, single view finding. We scrolled, I'm sorry, we are done with time, but I'll just go on quickly. So a lot of hunting through the CC, but we couldn't localize it. Offered her tomo-guided biopsy / hook wire. She won't agree. asked for an MR. She got a very useless MR done. Nothing was picked up. Then she ran away for 1 year because she didn't like what we were suggesting. Next year she came back. We could at least see it on both views. We still couldn't get an ultrasound correlate. So we again suggested tomo intervention. She wouldn't agree. Then she ran away for 4 years. In 22, at least we managed to get an ultrasound correlate, and we said now we can biopsy. We offered her a free biopsy. We were so desperate to biopsy. She wouldn't agree. So she went away, came back 6 months later with 2 small lesions. And at this time, she finally agreed to a free biopsy. We did the biopsy. There's the very little lesion. As you can see, 6 mm is one, and the other was 2-3 mm. I'm sorry, I'm just going to go on for 2-3 more minutes. And yeah. I'm so sorry. So, so this was actually still node negative. So here's another criticism of tomosynthesis, that we do pick up a lot of cancers, but a lot of them are very slow growing cancers. We've given her 5 years of patient anxiety. We've picked up a cancer, yes. We picked it up on tomo much earlier than it's seen on 2D, but have we given any mortality advantage to the patient? No, none at all. We could have easily, just biopsied this in 22. Then margins you pick up much better on tomo. So here's something which isn't seen clearly on mammo, but on tomo you can see how the margins are microlobulated / spiculated. You go with the worst descriptor, so spiculated. And this was an invasive carcinoma. Then you pick up bilateral and multicentric disease much more easily. This is a colleague. I would have been dead if I didn't have tomo, because you have to work with your colleague every day. And so on the 2D, she also had breast reduction, so there was some distortion anyway, and all I could see was one area on the left in the basic 2D, but on the 3D images there were 3 in the right, as you can see, and 1 on the left. And that was exactly how we picked it up on MR also. So tomo did as well as MR here, and oh, I'm so glad I'm done. I won't have any more bells now. So the take-home messages are that DBT has a much lower recall rate, so it improves workflow efficiency. We save a lot of time in the department. There's a higher cancer detection rate. It's about 2.2 additional cancers detected per 1,000 screens, which may not seem a lot, but ask those 4 or 5 women whose lives have been saved. And radiation concerns have led to synthesized view development. There's no difference in diagnostic accuracy between synthesized views and 2D views. We just have to get the radiologists to accept that and to go through their learning curve. DBT helps in lesion localization within the breast. I haven't brought that out very well in the talk, thanks to lack of time. It makes lesions more conspicuous, just shows them up so much better, shows you their features, helps you in characterizing normal structures, benign masses, and cancers with much more confidence, reducing unnecessary biopsies. And it frequently precludes the need for additional views. It determines the extent of disease, multicentricity, multifocality. So surgical planning is so much easier, and your surgeon loves you far more than he hates you. Thank you so much.